everyone, and welcome to Freedom Hub's weekly webinar, the 4 o'clock one on liberty and regulatory capture. And today we have a really good episode that ties in with another client of mine, National Health Federation, trying to exploit the increased frustration Americans have with the healthcare system that already frustrated them before the COVID hysteria. And with National Health Federation a month or two ago, Dr. Benz and I had set up a Google form where anyone could submit 3 problems they had with the healthcare system and then go through a series of meetings with Dr. Benz and National Health Federation to prioritize the submitted problems and then submit those prioritized problems through a matrix of effort to enact versus impact on the market in terms of improvement. And wonderfully, over 40 people have already submitted comments to the process. And sharing my screen, here is the website where you could submit your problems that I'll put in chat in a second. And I'll also put in chat the YouTube page for NHF, where you can look at the presentation Dr. Benz gave to us a month ago that he'll basically repeat tonight to invite any new people to submit their problems. This program is sponsored by my company that is a great open enrollment solution that mixes sharing and health savings accounts. So you're paying a lot less than you would if you were with insurance. Anybody in a small business or on their own should look at this website that I'll put in the chat. And our homepage is here, mphealthwealthfreedom.com. It's shortened to your.mp.com. And under the Home tab, if you scroll down to webinars, you can kind of get a preview of each week's guest, including today's. And you can see right here, it is Dr. Benz. And I really liked our email going out Monday, actually, Monday late, Tuesday early, because Dr. Benz, who is a long-term integrated health expert, he has a book, The Pocket Guide to Health. And he has a great reputation for facilitating disputes among powerful players in governments and corporations. And if you can see this, and I'll expand it on my screen, hopefully you can see the expanded version. He gave a perfunctory report card for the health system. He gave him every aspect of our system in F: controlling weights, cancer survival, controlling costs, a wellness plan, return on investment, hospital use of integrative medicine that people want, chronic illness. I think that's the most glaring problem. Chronic disease is going to hurt our readiness for the military troops. Over half of adults have chronic disease, and people are very loath to investigate the real causes of that because it brings up some elephants in the room a lot of folks don't want to talk about, especially in terms of solving the COVID crisis. Over prescriptions, et cetera. So I'm excited to hear what Dr. Benz has to say about this project, what it can do, how folks can participate. And with that, Dr. Benz, I'll stop sharing.
I'm going to give the final. And my title is The Wrong Medicine is Winning the War. And the reason I say that is about 6 years ago, I wrote an article for Life Extension magazine called The Beginning of the End of the War on Medicine. And this was written because the Cleveland Clinic had decided to do a major shift over to functional medicine. And I thought, well, with a clinic of that reputation, making this switch over to functional medicine, surely there would be a lot of movement from other organizations kind of joining in and saying, yeah, okay, if it's good enough for the Cleveland Clinic, then let's get on board. What happened is Quack Watch declared the whole Cleveland Clinic to be quacks. And that was their first salvo. against this whole movement. And so we've got a fight on our hands. And so it's not really the beginning of the end, as I thought it was in 2015. It's the beginning of the beginning. And so now we're hoping that the program that NHF is working on is going to get us there. The first bit of evidence that I was aware of on this topic came in Business Week magazine in 2006, when Dr. David Eddy did a study of all prescription drugs and all surgeries, and he could only find scientific evidence to support 20 to 25% of what allopathic medicine was doing. And I thought that this would be something really significant, and there'd be a lot of feedback from the medical community. And guess what? There was no feedback. They just ignored it. And as the news cycles happen, it went away. And I kept a copy of it, and a lot of other people did do, but it's not changing things. And so this is the evidence that started it for me. And then in 2009, there was a Senate Health Committee hearing, and Mehmet Oz was there, and Andrew Weil, and Dean Ornish, and Mark Hyman. They submitted 4 hours of testimony, and at the end of it, Mark Hyman summarized by saying, "You will never solve the current healthcare crisis if you just continue to try to do the wrong things better." And I thought, well, maybe now we're going to get some movement. We finally got four really well-known doctors stepping up, presenting to the U.S. Senate. But once again, the needle hardly moved at all, as again, the drug companies and the medical community just more or less ignored this, and the senators didn't sort of get on board and do anything serious with it either. But, it's not like nothing has been happening. Over the last 20 years, Life Extension has been publishing this document, Disease Prevention and Treatment. It's its 5th edition, so it's a big seller. And there's 130 evidence-based protocols here to combat the diseases of aging, which is basically chronic illness. And then there's my friend Joe Pizzorno's book, The Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine. This book's only sold 5 million copies. The problem is, these copies are all going to naturopaths and other doctors, and those who are really, really excited about this, like myself, and want to have this book as a resource so that we can tell other people what they can do to prevent and reverse chronic illness. This is 990 pages with 10,000 clinical trials in it. And this actually was the beginning of what Dr. Pizzorno was later going to develop in his artificial intelligence platform. And now that's out there and working for employers and individuals. And it's personalized medicine at its best, using health risk assessments, blood tests, genetic tests, and 40,000 clinical trials that are all used together to find out whether a person is becoming chronically ill. And they'll even tell you what the probability is that someone will get ill within the next 5 to 10 years. And they'll tell you with a certain degree of specificity, like you're going to have this disease in eight years, or you're going to have this disease in 4 years. So cells are able to do that. We look at enzymes, we look at other biomarkers, and we can actually see what's going on with this assessment. It's the only one of its kind in the world. And there's the Cleveland Clinic.
Dr. Ben, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Dr. Benz, real quick. You can start your video now. I had not allowed that in the security function. If you want to try it real quick.
Video. No, I'm just doing slides, Charlie.
No, you can start your own video, your camera. It should work now.
Oh, it should work? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. We'll edit this out.
Okay.
If it doesn't work, just continue. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. I was trying to get it to work, but I think it's at my end. All right. So the Cleveland Clinic's doing a lot of things. I'll show you a couple of studies that they're doing right now. But first, I wanted to tell you that this is the process, in case you haven't seen it in the National Health Federation presentation. This is a process that I've used in 100 different organizations around the world, private and public and nonprofit. And it's a 6-step process where you name the problem, you name the goal, you do some root cause analysis, which is the phase we're in right now. Then we brainstorm solutions, and we leave no stone unturned here. If we do the root cause analysis well, we know we're going to get great brainstorming solutions. Then in the 5th step, we look at all these solutions and we see which ones are the lowest effort and the highest impact, so that we make sure that we're picking the winners. And then finally, we're going to get down to developing a plan. And this will be a plan that includes the measurement of results. So we're going to develop a measurement system for all the indicators you're going to see later. Excuse me. And then we're going to be able to track our progress. And that's one of the great things about this. Nobody has done that before. So the problem is the majority of healthcare industry is focused on treating sick people for a profit, with mostly scientifically weak strategies. This system is unsustainable and will soon lead to less healthy population and will bankrupt individuals, organizations, and eventually the entire country. Economist magazine predicted that we would use 100% of our GNP on healthcare by the year 2065. And once we get to 25 or 30%, we'll already be the equivalent of bankrupt. We're at almost 20% now. So the goal is a simple goal statement, 50 words or less. The goal is to accelerate the movement towards the use of evidence-based medicine, and we also call it integrative medicine, to provide safer, more effective, and less costly healthcare. Additionally, individuals and organizations need to take more responsibility for efforts to prevent and reverse chronic illness with proven tools and strategies, supported by informed and motivated government and healthcare decision makers. I think that's sufficiently vague for everyone, but still covers the landscape. So we're up to step 3, and in this one, we're going to analyze the problem. So we asked everybody, over 40 people now, how would you describe the problem in your own words? What are the noticeable signs and symptoms? How are people affected? What causes this to happen? We want to dig down to the real root of the problem. What are the most damaged aspects of this? And how does this happen? Well, what stops us from solving this problem? And then how do we contribute to this problem ourselves? Because every one of us probably plays a bit of a role in this in one way or shape or form. And then we asked everybody to put 3 root causes that you think should be addressed and send them. And now we've got over 120 that have been tabulated into different categories, and that's available for anybody to look at. So here's some of the evidence to support what I've been talking about. This is an abstract from a study that was done, and you can see that this study estimates that about 75% of healthcare costs can be saved by the methods outlined in this study, which basically are all natural lifestyle problem solving and natural solutions to healthcare. And so there were 20 scientific references that were included in this. So if we have the potential to save up to 75% of healthcare costs, and we can't get anybody to do it, and we know that 80% of all illness is preventable, and we only spend 5% on prevention, I think we know what the problem is. There's too much spent on treatment, not enough on prevention. We have to find ways to reverse that. Here's a study from the Cleveland Clinic where they're actually going to look at the efficiency and cost effectiveness in terms of the management of chronic illness for functional medicine patients compared to non-functional medicine patients. So we're actually going to do a side-by-side comparison with different chronic illness strategies to see what the actual return on investment is for the functional medicine protocols. This is going to be really, really instrumental in getting the information out there that we need to get out there to prove that functional medicine really does have the science and the evidence. This was another study that I just wanted to point out because 70% of our population is now overweight and probably 30% is obese. And so we wanted to look at this just to let people know that if you have an employee that's obese, they're going to cost you $4,000 per year more than they normally would. So If you're being charged $12,000, then it's going to cost $16,000 for that particular employee to be treated because of the difficulties of the metabolism of people who are overweight, being inflamed and not being able to process foods properly and not being able to really do the things that they need to do to stay healthy. So I thought this was important. We have 100 studies like this on almost every factor that you can imagine.
As usual, another great guest, but a quick diversion. You'll notice that our full name is the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom. Well, let's talk about your health for a moment. If you'd like to escape from the stranglehold of insurance and be able to see alternative doctors or go across state lines for care, then you definitely need to take a look at patientempowerment.mpb.health and see if that's the fix you've been looking for. Now, let's get back to the show.
This was one that was interesting because this is one of those comparisons that was actually done where there was a meta-analysis of prescription drugs for the treatment of fatty liver disease. And vitamin E actually came up as the #1 solution, above and beyond all the prescription medications that were potentially utilized for this particular illness. So we have this for almost every illness now. We have this kind of face-to-face, back-to-back evaluation. Vitamin D to prevent breast cancer. It looks like with having at least 60 nanograms per milliliter of vitamin D3 in the blood, this will lower the risk of breast cancer by 82%. And this is, again, a clinical trial and actually was replicated twice. And so we know that vitamin D3 is not only the best way to prevent cancer, it's also one of the best things to treat cancer. It's also one of the prime indicators for COVID-19. And it's also one of the best treatments for COVID-19. But this is one of the things they just won't allow us to talk about. If they do, then we're sanctioned. And this is an interesting study because this is modified citrus pectin. And you can see in here that in 12 months, the use of modified citrus pectin was able to reduce PSA in men by 70%. And it's very, very powerful in preventing cancer, in treating cancer, and doing all the things that what I would call a miracle nutraceutical can do to address cancer. Not just prostate cancer, but almost all cancers. It's able to do this similar mechanism. And this was, again, a study that was done in 2014 where they compared nutraceuticals to pharmaceuticals. Again, we have this evidence. It's been out there for 7 years, and we just can't get anybody to pay attention to it. And so we can see all the things that it's been, oxidative stress has been involved in allergies and Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, eye disease, immune function, inflammation, and Parkinson's, and obesity. We have the evidence. We're just not getting it out there to be used by the mainstream media. So this is a kind of an extension of the scorecard or the report card that Charlie referred to earlier. You can see that, yes, for all the things that was mentioned earlier, there is an F for almost all of them. Where there's an A, it's like health books and articles available. Yes, there's a lot. There's an A for that. Best practices that are out there for lifestyle avoidance. Yes, they're out there. Best practices for integrative solutions. Yes, A. But it's a D or an F to try to say that any of these are being implemented or being used in a serious way. So that's the problem. We get an A for effort in terms of the things that are potentially out there to be done. We're getting a D and an F every time we try to get the system to recognize that this is something that they should pay attention to. We have to change these numbers. And for each one of these, we're going to get actual statistics so that we can measure the improvement as we go forward. And so that's one of the things we're going to do. We're going to try to create a health index, a natural health index with the actual percentages for all of these 36 factors. And I mentioned earlier that we have to really talk about self-care because unfortunately people have gotten ahead of their doctors in a lot of cases. And so I wrote this study about the cost and benefits of self-care. And in this study, I defined what the different categories of self-care were. You can have passive self-care. You can have curious self-care. You can have inquiring self-care. You can have consultative self-care, and you can have assertive self-care. So obviously, in the passive healthcare, that person isn't doing very much at all. They just listen to what their doctor says and don't pay any attention to a lot of the articles and reports and books that are out there. But as they move into this process, they can move into this assertive self-care, where they lower employee health premiums if they're in a company that pays attention to this. They can lower absenteeism. They can virtually become sickness-free, and they can prevent most disease, and they can treat most diseases naturally. So this is what we call assertive self-care. This is where you have to work with your medical practitioner instead of having them work for you. And so this is the self-care paradigm shift, where you can see that in the passive self-care, you've got your conventional MD, but at the assertive self-care, you've got your holistic or your functional medicine MD. Here, maybe there's some questions asked by the passive person, but in the assertive one, you're going to create this holistic plan and share it with your doctor. And so you take the initiative. I haven't had a doctor tell me what to do for 20 years. I go into the doctor's office, we look at the test results, and he says to me, what do you think we should do? And then I tell him what we think we should do, and he goes, sounds good to me, let's do that. And so that's where you want to be. You want them to get the testing done, and you want them to validate what you're going to do. Now, you can also go back a level and have you collaborate with your doctor, but that's probably the more realistic one. And so we're looking for most people to try to move from the passive to the consultative self-care approach, where they work with their doctors to get things done that they need to get done in terms of prevention and in terms of treatment. So one of the tools that we can use, and there's going to be a right time to do this, and it will be a little bit later in the process, is that we can look at what the forces for and against any kind of reform are. And so the forces for reform are rising cost of healthcare, allopathic treatments do not work and can cause harm, employers' rising healthcare costs, it really lowers competitiveness, and I think that's really a big factor. Discarded drugs are causing water pollution and secondary injection via the water supply system. I don't know whether you realize that, but when you go into even rural areas and you empty out cesspools, there's thousands and thousands of drugs and things in there that people have discarded. But when you get into the regular healthcare or the regular water treatment system, these medicines are coming out in the feces and going back into the water system. And so people are ingesting these nutraceuticals or these pharmaceuticals all the day, every day in every water system in the country. The public is worried about the high cost of healthcare, and the health media outlets are growing. I mean, it's really interesting how these podcasts and articles and books are growing. We just have to get more exposure. And then the forces against: big pharma money, media, government, doctors, insurance companies have a monopoly, and they can control the health providers. In some states, the only provider is Blue Cross and Blue Shield. The FDA controls scientific studies and attacks natural medicine. The food industry causes addiction with their foods that have fat and sugar and salt in them. Doctors are afraid of losing their license and their income, so they don't want to say too much at any point. That's why people like me who don't have a license at stake, we can go out and say these things, and they're not. They can go after us, and they can claim that we're not telling the truth. But the science says that we are telling the truth. The politicians are greedy for power and money, and so big pharma is involved in that as one of the big contributors to pharma. And then the public lacks interest and knowledge about their health, and conventional media is corrupted by big pharma influence again. These are just some of the forces for and against. What we try to do then is find out, what can we do to accelerate and improve the forces for reform? What can we do to mitigate and push back the forces against? So we're looking for influencers. Okay? These are some of the influencers that can make this thing happen once we get the plan and all the details up there. On-board legislators, alternative practitioners, natural health media, wellness-focused employers, supplement companies, self-funded insurance companies, Hollywood advocates. In other words, If we could do movies, either a documentary or a regular movie, and have it really feature a lot of the things that we're talking about, this would be a powerful tool. ESOP, that's profit sharing for companies. If you have an employer that has an ESOP program where the employees are getting a part of the profits, boy, are they ever interested in their health, because they can reduce the cost and they can get profit from it for their efforts. Natural health writers are a big part of this. We have to get all of them engaged in this and participating in all the studies that we want to have done. Health podcasters, there's a lot of them out there and they're growing every day, and we just have to get them involved. We have to get all these people coordinated. They're all doing their own separate thing. We have to get them together. Physical fitness clubs, cancer support groups, water pollution cities, air pollution cities. These are places that want solutions, and they're not getting them, because we have to control toxins, and we have to get natural medicines to work for them. Taxpayers Associations are another group. I talked to one yesterday, Florida Tax Watch. The executive director and I have been friends for 25 years. He's ready to let me have a presentation to the Florida legislature. He can help to arrange it. Labor unions, parent associations in the school system, child health rights groups, environmental groups, and organic farmers. These are all influencers, and they can be part and parcel of everything we're trying to do. So that's my presentation, and I'd like to answer any questions that anybody has. Just let me know.
Thanks, Dr. Benz. And if folks see in the chat, I suggest clicking the reactions option in your Zoom controls, and you'll see the raise hand icon. And Paul Roberts, if you want to unmute yourself, you go right ahead, sir.
All right. Well, great presentation. Thank you. You make a lot of great points. So I think one of the things that came to mind, to me anyway, was the profit motive, for big pharma and just in general healthcare, right? I mean, the large corporations, they don't have an incentive to advocate for healthy alternatives. They have a profit motive to, push their agenda and keep people sick, essentially. Any comments on that, or how do we deal with that? I guess, because that, to me, it seems like one of the monsters in the room.
So what about your wealth? If your money could actually talk to you, would you listen to it? Well, with the DNA Network Academy, your money actually can talk to you, and it's going to tell you just what it told this client. This family had over 24 debts, mortgages, car loans, the works. They were on track to take 20 years to pay it all off, and instead did it in 8.5. Plus, they did it without refinancing, making more money, or even changing their lifestyle. So find out for yourself with a free analysis that is completely confidential. No personal information, no social security numbers, no credit checks, none of that nonsense. But what is exciting is that the outcome of that report you receive is a guaranteed outcome for you. To get that report, head on over to bit.ly/debt-to-wealth. You will arrive at this simple form. Fill it in as simple as lender number 1 and credit card number 2. What really matters is the accuracy of your numbers. You'll be able to see that if instead of 20 years or whatever your number is, that you may actually be out of debt and on your way to wealth in as little as 6.3 years like this client.
Yes, and a lot of people mentioned that. Thanks for saying that, because that was one of the number one things that people did mention when they sent back their 3 problems. And so we're going to have to address it. And so when we get to the brainstorming, you're going to see people say things like, well, we need to get a tax credit for wellness programs that actually produce results. And that's something that I've been advocating for a long, long time. Because the wellness programs that are out there aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they're not sophisticated enough. They have flyers in the washroom that say, make sure you exercise, or stop smoking. This is not the kind of wellness that we need. We need wellness focused on evidence-based medicine, and that's what I've been pushing for all the companies that I work with. And so now I've got a seminar coming up in the first quarter for the National Wellness Institute, where I've proposed for their hundreds and hundreds of members that they consider this kind of wellness program where we can actually measure the results and see what the return on investment is for that company. If we get those individual companies doing it, then that's going to push it into the direction of legislation that'll maybe get the national government or at least state governments to say, wait a minute, if there's a profit in this, if we can actually show that if we reduce obesity in our city and our state, and we can actually show that that will save every business this amount of money, then for God's sakes, let's everybody get on this anti-obesity thing and get people to lose weight. So there's lots of things that will be done, and those will come out in the brainstorming session where we're actually going to measure them based on how much effort's involved and how much impact it will have. And so I hope we can find a lot of solutions to that exact problem, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Benz, Charlie here. What have you found thus far with your experience with National Health Federation in getting this project going? What have you liked so far, and where do you see this November 15th meeting going?
Well, I've been really encouraged by it because I sent out, we picked a dozen people to try to say, here's the issues that have been identified. Here's the problems that were identified. 3 or 4 of them already sent back and say, that looks like the best list of problem issues I've ever seen. And so I think we're doing a pretty good job. And I might say we, I mean the 40 some participants that submitted them. And then I put them all into categories. And so we've sent it back, and a couple of people did send extra things. So that's great. So I would say you don't necessarily have to have 500 people. All you have to have is 40 or 50 people that really are interested and knowledgeable, and you end up getting amazing results. So I would say the problem solving root cause thing is going as good as I could have expected it to go. If we don't do great root causes, we cannot get great solutions. So I think we're one step forward to having some really great brainstorming sessions.
And before I let Dr. Wallen ask his question, have you found to your happiness that the submitted root causes have been ones that you predicted they would submit? And then have you been surprised, or just has it been interesting what other root causes that maybe wouldn't be ones that you would submit?
Listen, I'm surprised all the time with these exercises. And so I would say about 80% of the things were pretty much what I predicted, because I've been doing this for 30 years on this topic, more or less. But about 20% were new twists, you know, like the middleman. I mean, somebody said, there's a middleman in all these things. And if we can cut out the middleman, then maybe we can cut out some of the stupidity and the cost and the time delays. So there were very subtle but really important things that were coming out. So I'm really pleased with the creativity of the responses.
Speaking of middlemen, Dr. Wallen, you've been trying to empower patients. We do need some middlemen here and there who are really good innovators and concierge handholders. What are your thoughts on this project and what you've been doing?
Yeah, thanks so much for the talk. I mean, I think, a lot of what you said is absolutely true, and agree with it 100%. I guess my question is, from the middleman standpoint, certainly, like Charles said, obviously a lot of them need to go, and it really needs to get back to what we were pre-1980s, where, patients and healers or doctors, what have you, are really working together rather than having, all these other folks in the middle. And one of the things I'm curious your thoughts on is, do you feel like, obviously this part of this cycle started back in World War II, where, there was the wage freeze, and then all of a sudden health benefits became, an option where jobs could, essentially kind of market for more employees by giving them benefits. And then that's kind of continued to expand through the IRS, kind of being, making that money non-tax liable and et cetera. So do you think, like, basically disconnecting employees from their employer-sponsored health benefits might be potentially beneficial legislation?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that came out. I'm pretty sure that Texas was the place that started this whole employer approach to insurance, and then it spread fairly quickly and nationally. And so now we end up with a system where it's not transportable, it's not flexible and movable. And so a lot of people have said the benefits are not movable. We need to be able to go from state to state, not only for competition, but to make sure that we're matching up what our needs are with what is offered. And so I think that's 100% right. We've already seen a lot of people give that exact response, that we need portability. And now, if we go back to what Mark Hyman said, we need portability, but we need it for the right insurance. And so we need it for the natural evidence-based integrated protocols. So if you don't do the two together, all you get is portability of the wrong thing. And so we have to increase and improve the actual insurance industry to cover integrative medicine, then make sure it's portable.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Wallen. Do you have a follow-up, or I can move on?
No, I'm good at the moment. Thank you.
Great. Let me see if some other guests want to chime in, maybe mentioning their projects. Dr. Ackland, if you want to unmute yourself. Oh, I see your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question, Dr. Ackland.
Yeah, sure. A great follow-up. So many thanks, Doc. So well spoken. And just as an echo on that last point about the portability and taking forward the wrong message inside the wrong infrastructure. How do you incentivize people to step into a cash if that's the case, barring some sort of alternative medicine managed care system, which is far off? Are we working, how do I say this? Is there a controversy inside the insurance conversation that maybe we could just walk away from? And how do you incentivize that? Is there an organization working on that issue?
Well, it's interesting you would say that, because I know Charlie's working with MPB Health, and they've already purchased our artificial intelligence platform. And as I understand it, they're going to use it to incentivize the members of their medical cost sharing program. Because if we can see that they've got a score of 40 out of a possible 100, if we can say to them, if you raise that to 50 or 60, this is what we can do. And so we have to find some incentives within those medical cost sharing programs. I've talked to Rod Maxim about it, and he really likes the idea. And we're just looking for an opportunity to actually do it. He's right now engaged in a big program to sign up 2,500 people by the end of the year. So I think it all boils down to giving people some real incentives. And you know what real incentives mean? Cash. And so if they can see that their premiums or their deductibles or their copays or something is going to improve, if they can improve their score, then we're home free. And there's already evidence that works, because there's a company out there called Benecomp. And Benecomp, for the last 10 or 15 years, has been actually just using better systems of compliance. In other words, coaching people, getting them to be compliant with their conventional medicine treatments. And they've proven an 11 to 12% reduction in cost with just good compliance. They proved it so well, they were able to get a major insurance company to actually cover it and guarantee it. So that if somebody signs up with Benecomp, they get an immediate reduction of 11 to 12% of what their premiums were the year before at the starting point. It's because it's all guaranteed in their insurance backup plan.
Love it. Love it. Is there a group? Do you know of a group that's doing, what about the little guy, being able to speak that to the little guy as, where do you get the care? Where do you go? What practitioner do you go to for the deliverable? If it's an independent practitioner, it's not an affiliated practitioner.
Well, that's the most difficult problem. If you wanted to say what is the main the main problem is it the number of practitioners that are really capable of doing this. And so you can have direct care practitioners. I know 100 of them, and 99 of them don't know what they're talking about as far as nutrition goes. And they don't have the evidence to back up all the things that are needed. And so they've got the right strategy, they got the right principle. They just need education. It may be that we're gonna find that we need to spend $10 or $20 million just on developing a really good education program so that these doctors can get this certification as quickly as possible. We know it's available from Arizona State University through the Dr. Wiles program, where they can become a holistic medical doctor. And we know it's available through the Functional Medicine Institute. So we have at least 2 organizations that can do certification. We need to expand the number of organizations that can do that and get more doctors taking that training. That's one of the #1 things we have to do.
Thanks, Dr. Benz and Dr. Ackland. And I'll add that there are a number of entrepreneurs trying to help the independent practitioners because 70% of them are employed by hospitals, some of which are owned by insurance companies. And a lot of the providers that present on our weekly webinar want to go independent, but there's a chicken and the egg problem. They want more cash patients who want more cash doctors. So we're suffering the cartel from both ends, and all of the entrepreneurs need to cooperate to create this better market. This project will be part of how that happens. Dr. Benz, before I let Dr. Wallen ask the final question, can you describe the next phase of your brainstorm meeting, November 15th, and to incentivize people to fill in the form that I put in the chat to give us their 3 problems with the healthcare system and join us on this multi-stage project?
Yes, we're going to actually do the same thing there, only it's going to be called brainstorming. And so what we're going to do is send out all of the problem statements out to people and say, here's what we found, here's what everybody said were the main problems that had to be addressed. Now we want you to find 3 solutions. We want you to pick the problems you think are the most crucial, and we want you to find a solution you think will really, really work. And we're going to define that in terms of what really constitutes a great solution. In terms of effort and impact, we're going to do that next. That's like the 5th step. In the effort and impact, we're going to have a grid, and it's going to have a horizontal thing and a vertical one, where we go from 1 to 10 horizontally with effort and the other way in impact. And so we're going to try to find those things that are low effort and high impact. And a really quick answer to the problem about hospitals, there's already incentives for hospitals. The incentive is there's too many patients that are coming back within 30 days with the same illness. In other words, they're not treating it effectively. And Medicaid penalizes them for that. I'm already having hospitals and doctors in Georgia and Florida saying to me, what can we do to get our patients to not come back within 30 days because we get these heavy penalties? Integrative medicine is the only way to do that. And so if we can get a handful of hospitals to actually do this integrative approach and watch them see the numbers go down in terms of the number of people that have to be readmitted after 30 days, this will be the success we need to take it into a bigger and take it out to a bigger set of hospitals.
Dr. Wallen, batting cleanup, here we go.
Yeah, thanks. More of a comment. Ultimately, I think I absolutely agree with the fact of empowering and educating folks, and I think part of that lies in even just from some of the graphics that I've made. I mean, basically individuals could potentially save $6,400, families potentially up to $17,000 just based on the averages of what they're actually spending out of pocket before they get benefits, and versus basically using a DPC and some type of sharing program as their catastrophic. Basically I did the calculations with MPB Health's data, but the reality is that's huge, and I think certainly educating people as well as I certainly agree. I mean, myself, I've seen probably 4 or 5 different doctors for one problem, and essentially kind of ended up in the same spot with no real answer. And so I certainly see, I think unfortunately to some extent, big business and universities and such kind of, a lot of allopaths are kind of brainwashed into thinking that they know, everything from their training, or essentially, some of the alternative stuff is kind of hogwash. But I mean, I certainly think the integrative piece is huge, and education all around, both from, the healer side and the patient side is huge.
Well, thanks, Dr. Wallen. And everyone in the chat, you'll see the link to submit your 3 problems to be invited to our next National Health Federation brainstorm on these problems, November 15th. Please click that link, join us. We have a lot of heavy hitters in there. We'll have a lot of fun, and everyone on this call is a good friend and a high quality individual. We'd love to have you involved with Dr. Benz. We have a lot of ventures building around this. So please join us, and let's all make money doing good. So Dr. Benz, I want to thank you very much. Any last words?
No, I think that, again, it's not, you don't have to have 1,000 people to do great things. You only have to have a handful of the right people with the right knowledge. And we can move mountains with the people that I think we have involved, and the people that will come in after today. I think we're going to do well. And then we're going to convince the money people. And that's where the big rub is going to come in. We're going to create great plans. We need the money to take those plans forward. And that's where we have to have a great plan with return on investments built right into it, so that the investors can say, hey, this looks like it's something that I want to put my money into, because this is going to make a real difference. That's where we're going to go next.